Hey everybody, Dr. K here coming to you from Integrative Health Management. I know I haven't been on in a while. I am so sorry. I apologize for that. I promised to go over the digestive system, and that's what we're going to do today. I've been really full with my schedule, which is amazing, getting people results, and we're just packed. So that's, really cool. Happy to get people to their destinations, but wanted to talk about the whole digestive tract today because it's just so important. It's such an important system, and I wanted to give a brief overview, but I'm realizing this just isn't brief because there's so much that happens within our digestive tract. It's almost as important as our brain. There's just so much that occurs there. So what we'll do is we'll go over like a skeleton of it and everything that it kind of does so that you can gain an understanding of it. And then I may have to break this up into pieces and go a little deeper into the topics because there's so much that goes on here. So one thing I want to talk about though that ties into this is the holidays. The holidays are over, but one thing that I just hear notoriously through the holiday season is my family was sick, all my coworkers were sick, I got it too, my kids were sick, so I got it, our whole family got it. It's something that just seems to happen at an escalated, much higher rate, around the holidays. And I really think there's three things that perpetuate that is sugar, alcohol, and stress. And alcohol really is sugar, so it's kind of tied in one. But our stress levels are so much higher because we run around, and then there's all these holiday parties and more pastries and making cookies and baking cookies and eating them as you bake them, and everybody's giving you different pastries, and really, eating a certain amount of gram of sugar shuts down your whole immune system within 15 minutes. It has such an impact. It's absolutely unbelievable. So drinking a bunch of drinks, especially the fruity drinks, around the holidays, it's no wonder that we tend to be more vulnerable with our bodies during that time. So, and I know it's challenging. Everybody gives us stuff and we eat it. But for future reference, I would steer clear of the sugar, eat that minimally, make sure you stay up on your vitamin C and probiotics, because the sugar is going to really screw up the gut bacteria, and your gut bacteria a lot of times is your first line defense too. So I want to talk about how the whole stomach system, your whole digestive system kind of works through. So digestion first starts in the mouth. So when you chew food, or when you start seeing food, your brain makes the connection, I'm going to eat food, and it starts to produce a couple of enzymes that start to digest the food right away in the mouth, and that's amylase, lipase, there's a couple of others. So that's the basics. It starts to digest as you chew. You're producing these digestive enzymes that are starting to break down the food to make it much easier for once it gets into the stomach. It prepares everything. It goes down through your esophagus, so it's kind of going down. The esophagus, all the organs, digestive organs, have a mucosal lining. So they have kind of like in your coat, you have a lining that's on the surface, and that has certain antibodies that react right off the bat for certain, allergic reactions food-wise, but that's a whole other separate topic. And that's IgA. So the esophagus is lined with that as well, but I'm sure you've heard of people getting things like diverticulitis, esophagitis. That's inflammation of the esophageal lining and the esophagus, and there's various things that can cause that. I'm not going to get into that. That can get infected, it can get inflamed, but regardless, the food goes down the esophagus, and then there's a little doorway, and they call it a sphincter, and it opens, and then, the brain knows when this is happening and triggers it, and the door opens, and the food starts to work its way into the stomach, which is almost kind of a little higher than we think. It's a little just under the rib cage, and lots of things happen there. So there's all sorts of things that happen once it hits the stomach. So you can get inflammation of the stomach, you can get cancer of the stomach, you can get gastritis, which is a form of inflammation, you can gastroparesis, H. pylori, which is the bug that causes your stomach ulcers. It's just a whole separate topic. Like I said, we're just going to do an overview, and then I may have to dive into some of these things. So Once it gets into the stomach, it's released into the small intestine. So this is a process. Let's talk about the stomach. Once it gets into the stomach, a few more enzymes are released to help digest the food even further. And that's hydrochloric acid, and that's produced by your parietal cells, these certain cells in the stomach, as well as gastrin, which is a hormone that kind of produces and neutralizes more enzymes. It absorbs some H2O, it absorbs some alcohol, and some drugs that you're taking, like synthetic or prescription drugs. So not all of that is done in the stomach. Some of it goes down to the intestines, but this is kind of where it starts. So I did a whole video on how much hydrochloric acid are you producing. So how much acid are you producing to break down your food? Because it's really important. The stomach can't just take your piece of chicken and move that on through. That has to be turned into a liquid. And hydrochloric acid and enzymes are what help liquefy the food so that it can move on through. So lots of things damage the stomach. Alcohol, prescription drugs damage the stomach. Non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. What we're talking here is Advil, ibuprofen, Aleve, things like that. They create holes in the stomach. So that's really important. Bacteria can damage it, viruses can damage it, radioactive treatments, so any type of radioactive material sometimes that you take, or even x-rays, sometimes they damage the whole body, really. And it takes about 3 to 12 weeks to heal things up. So if you've been on long-standing use of anti-inflammatories of any sort, but particularly, things like in the family of Advil, ibuprofen, they're really, those are non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. They create what I call really is it's like a mesh lining, but it'll create holes in the stomach. And so when there's holes in the stomach, food that's not digested can kind of get through. It sneaks through, and that's not where it's supposed to sneak through. That is not the goal. It weakens the stomach, and when these food particles get through, so when the stomach looks like this and something sneaks through that lining, it gets into the bloodstream, and it's not supposed to be there. And then the body starts attacking it, and that's where they're seeing a lot of autoimmune disorders starting, things like rheumatoid arthritis, things like fibromyalgia. This is one of the reasons why they're linking this to being the cause. If you've been on long-standing use of ibuprofen or Advil, it is really challenging to heal up the stomach because it's just been weakened. It can be done, but it definitely, you have to work to get that out and get everything healed up. So it does take quite a bit to get the stomach to heal up from all these things. So it's really important to chew your food slowly and thoroughly so that you minimize these little particles of food getting through the stomach, and eating smaller meals. Don't overeat and expand your stomach, and then it has so much work. Meat takes a lot of energy to digest, so taking a digestive enzyme would help with that as well, but that's not, it's not the goal. You want the body producing its own digestive enzyme, so that's kind of a supplement to get somebody going initially to help, but then we want the system booted up and help it to get back to doing what it needs to be doing. So that's kind of what I do with my clients. We just kind of help clean things up so things start working better on their own. So licorice is one of those things that can help the stomach heal. Aloe is another thing that can help the stomach heal. So that may be a separate sector of something that I talk about later. So there's various things we can do to help the stomach heal and eliminate the things that are causing an impact. So moving onward, from the stomach, once things are liquid, there's another little doorway that goes into the small intestine. If you think about the small intestine, I'm sure you've seen pictures of your intestines. Don't they look similar to the brain? They're all like wrinkly. Yeah, because the stomach and the small intestine, they actually can function almost independently. So also a lot of serotonin, dopamine, neurotransmitters are produced in the stomach. So if your stomach is not working right, if it's weak, they have linked it to depression. So you're not producing those neurotransmitters at the levels that they need to be produced. Another reason to clean up the stomach. So really, really important. But anyway, we go on to the small intestine. The small intestine has 3 parts to it. It's where most of the digestion occurs. And a lot of times you may hear a lot about small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So this is where probiotics start to play a role. This is where your good bacteria, bad bacteria, if they're battling in there, you're having issues and you're not getting the nutrition that you need, and it's creating all sorts of physical symptoms, and that's like, again, I have to break that up because that's a whole other topic. But that's where most digestion, absorption of nutrients takes place. It has little projections. They kind of look like fingers. They're called villi, and the food comes against it, and they kind of differentiate what's going to pass through, and they're like the guards. So they kind of regulate what gets through into your bloodstream. This is where your nutrients start to pass in through to your bloodstream, and your body picks out what it needs and then sheds the rest. So pretty miraculous how the body's like, okay, we're going to take this is what we need, and the rest you're just going to poop out. Yeah, pretty interesting how it knows to do that. It's 22 feet long, so it's really long, all crammed into your lower abdominal area. So it's got the duodenum, that's the first part, the jejunum, and the ileum. The duodenum is where you have chemical digestion, so your food gets further digested. Your enzymes, there's a few more enzymes get produced. The bacteria is there kind of doing its thing. And then once it gets into the ileum, that's where your carbohydrates are digested and absorbed. That's where your proteins get absorbed and digested, amino acids, your vitamins, your nutrients. That's where a lot of the central part is where a lot of this stuff takes place. And then when you get to your ileum, which is kind of at the end of the deal, that's where your B12 gets absorbed. That's where bile salts gets absorbed. A handful of other little things happen as it trickles over. And then again, from there, it goes into the large intestine. Large intestine's a little bigger, but still all wound up. And that's where a lot of the water absorption takes place. And the remaining undigested food kind of goes in there. And that's kind of where the appendix takes its little course. That's where short chain fatty acids get absorbed. Bacteria, byproducts kind of get dealt with. That's where your vitamin K and biotin are produced, and it goes straight into your bloodstream. So again, if your digestive tract is not working right, all these things are starting to not go right, and you're not getting everything that you need. So really important. So big factors that affect or disrupt your digestion. Antibiotics, they kill off, I don't want to say kill off, but they dysregulate your good gut bacteria and bad gut bacteria. So if you've been on long-term antibiotic use and you've taken a lot of antibiotics, give me a call, because there's ways we can bring that up to par and clean that up and get your bacteria back in line. There's ways we can do that pretty simply. So that's one biggie. Stress, that's a big one, and that's where I kind of want to intervene here, because stress, like I deal with the energy piece as well, and stress kind of sits in the field, and when it works its way in, that's when you start having symptoms. So when I work with my clients one-on-one, we clean up the stress so it stops working its way into the system and stops creating all these things, and we treat the body symptoms, and things just start to resolve. And it's really cool how that starts to happen. So, and then parasites and alcohol damages, I think I've mentioned that already. Those are the biggies that really create an issue. So really, taking probiotics is super important. The gallbladder is part of this whole digestive thing. It's kind of a reservoir for bile. I'm sure you've heard of bile. The liver kind of stores it in the gallbladder, and the gallbladder kind of shoots it out as needed. So bile helps you digest fats. So when you've eaten a very fatty meal, bile is what helps digest those fats and emulsify them and gets them to move on through. If you don't have a gallbladder, then the liver is going to pour that bile directly into your small intestine, and that can create some diarrhea, especially if you've eaten like a really fatty meal. So it helps break down fat. It also helps break down and drains waste from the liver into the small intestine. So that's one way it kind of cleans things up. So if your gallbladder's kind of not working and you don't have the bile, well, then you're kind of storing some toxins. So the liver can get a little toxic, and that we need help to support the liver in these kinds of cases. So that's really important. So this is a rundown of the whole digestive tract in a nutshell, and it's very condensed because there's so much more that happens at each one of these steps biochemically. But the biggest thing I want you to really know is, what you eat and your stress level are just like hands down so important. So if you're having a lot of stress, it's going to start affecting your spleen, it's going to start affecting your liver, it's going to start affecting your digestive tract, and then you're wondering where all this came from. If you're having things like acid reflux, which again is a whole topic that I kind of talked about briefly before, if you're getting acid reflux, if you're getting these types of things, then we've got to look at what emotions are you having that are creating this, because a lot of times it's stuffing things down. It's what do I not want to look at? What do I not want to deal with? What is my stress level at work that I just keep shoving down? As you kind of shove it down, and you can feel it. It feels like a rock in your stomach, doesn't it? When something's bothering you, doesn't it feel like a rock in your stomach? Or when you're having difficulty or challenge dealing with something emotionally, or you need to talk to somebody, and you're having difficulty, or you're like, I'm not gonna talk to them about this, forget it, they're not gonna, whatever the reasons may be, you feel like a rock in your stomach, and it kind of sometimes feels like a rock in your throat. So this whole thing starts getting affected, and it's no doubt that then sometimes people wonder why they're getting acid reflux, why they're getting constipation, because all this stuff it's working its way in. Your body is sensing that. So cleaning up the stress, and when I work one-on-one with clients, that's something I really resolve, and we get all that stuff out and cleaned out so that it stops affecting the system so much. And then we clean the body up and we help the stomach along. So it's really, really important. So we'll move down as we go, but this is an overview of the stomach, so I may break this up a little bit more, talk about some more of these factors, give you some tips on where you can help clean the stomach up. Again, we got to look at so many factors. How much antibiotics have you been taking in your life? Do you have a virus? Do you have bacteria in your stomach? Do you have parasites? All these things kind of need to be looked at because they have worked their way in, and we have to clean those out as well as any emotional stressful pieces. And then the body can get better. So definitely works, but it takes time, 3 to 12 weeks, like a minimum, for the stomach and GI tract to get cleaned out as we work through. So hopefully this was helpful. Please share it with anybody that might be dealing with some stomach issues. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can email me at drk@ihmohio.com, or leave me a message below, or direct message me, and I'm happy to chat with you and see how I can help. All right, and we'll chat soon again on more. Till then, take good care.